Hey, today we've got another great sales leader, uh, sales rep, somebody who's been doing it quite a while, somebody who I got to know on LinkedIn, came highly recommended as one of the best sales reps out there. And I think you're going to like this episode. What we're going to be talking about is earning the right. What that means is a lot of things. It's not just preparation, it's not just having the chops, but really, doing the homework, thinking through, building up the relationship, adding value that's in the eyes of the beholder, instead of just coming up with great messaging, talking to somebody, how to talk with somebody. And this is kind of what I teach in Start the Conversation, Get the Meeting. And I think too many of us think it's just an email, it's just a pitch, just a cold call. The problem is that's not what B2B sales is. People don't go from, I have no idea what you do, to I'm interested. It takes time. You have to build it up. You're doing large deals. The people who listen to this podcast are in business to business sales. You are doing a large deal. You're interested, but they're not. They don't know. You got to start where they are and build up. So we got a great guest. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. When you have, the opportunity to listen to somebody who's been in sales a long time and kind of hear their perspective, learn from them, it's a great opportunity. Before we get into it, make sure you're checking out CoVideo. If you happen to be in Start the Conversation, Get the Meeting, there's a one-on-one I did using video as part of the building up that awareness. And it's a great example, almost perfect example of how to use it. When to use it's different, and it's different in every market. So go check that out. One-on-ones are at the very bottom of the course. Also had a great office hours yesterday. So check out CoVideo. They've done a great job talking about video because we're not just using it in email. We're using it as our way of meeting. And some people don't want to turn the camera on, but everybody kind of wants to see the other person. So CoVideo kind of helps you there. Also, what you can convey in videos, not just you. There's a lot of things you can do. And getting some analytics about it is insanely helpful. So tell them you heard about it on the podcast. Let's get into the interview. I'll sum up all the things that are going on in the courses at the very end. Here we go. Hey, Kipper, welcome to the show. The way you're getting started, give us an update on yourself.
Sure, Brian. First, thanks for having me. And as I know other guests, Shane Orrick's a good friend of mine that you had on 4 months ago, and I think great content. We're old cronies. But for me, my life has been in sales. I remember when I was at USC, my first business class, professor said, how many of you want to be in the sales career as you grow up? And not one person raised their hand. But I very quickly, it was an entrepreneurship class. Quickly, he made us realize everything we do in life is selling, right? So I guess I've been in sales like all of us have, whether we realize it or not, for many years. Though I've spanned many areas, my career has really been around what we're experiencing today. It's getting to be a dumbed down word, customer experience, or CX. It's like CRM was for you and I years ago, right? But within CX, what I'm doing is helping business leaders in Fortune 1000 brands, help them drive the digital transition and provide great experiences to their customers. Now, a customer, Brian, could be a customer as a retail, could be your business partner, it could be an employee, a constituent, a student. So that can be defined, but really it's around how do I help you marry online and offline, control costs, and then sometimes self-fund a project while delivering the better experience that you have today. And that's what I've been doing the last 12 years.
Sounds like a pretty easy sell.
Easy sell, trying to get the conversation though, right? It's very vague. And right. You think that's good or bad. And I don't. I think you and I could realize you've got to be very poignant, right? I just heard a comment yesterday about 1 degree difference, and you don't think about that. But then if you're on a rocket ship and your systems go down, and I've got to manually calculate how do I get to the moon, 1 degree, I'm off into space and I'll never be found. You think about that with your employees or your customers, it's typically not 1%, but it could be 30 or 40%. And so you've got to hammer on that. So it's not an easy thing to address, but it's an easy thing to solve, I guess is the way to say it.
Yeah. I mean, sales is a game of inches, and you got to be first of all, going in the right direction with the right people. And, the difference between the person who wins and the person who doesn't, who knows what it is sometimes, right?
Right.
And it can flip flop based off of who called them last sometimes.
Right. It's timing, right? It's timing. There's no silver bullet, as you said in a couple of your videos a while back. It's timing and the right messaging. But you want to break through that ceiling, right? That's what I think you and I want to talk about is you got to step back and look at things before you just act on something, or you're just going to get no results except for filling in your spreadsheet for management that I did this, but it didn't lead to an end result.
Yeah. Well, let's dig into that. Earning the right. What does that mean to you?
Sure. I use it as a barometer. And just like I mentioned, before I do anything, am I earning the right? And we could break that down into pre-sales to even a customer, correct? So as I mentioned, when you see some of the message I get personally on LinkedIn where people are trying to sell me something or try to solve a problem, they're not earning the right. And now more than ever, like me talking with you, it was hard enough getting into a C-suite or an office. Now to get somebody on a digital communication is tough, but to do that when you're inundated, you have to earn the right. Now that could be your background, a story that relates to them. More importantly, you're trying to find that piece of the puzzle that each one of us are solving both professionally and personally every day. That, Brian, I can help you with your viewers. I can help people subscribe to your service. I just think earning the right is you have to bring value is the bottom line. And I use, Brian, earn the right just as a mindset before I do anything is this email I'm sending you to hopefully get on the phone with you or a video, am I earning the right? Am I giving you something of value?
Well, you use the tags that included their name and their company name and some competitors, right? Then that's the right, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And like, you and I are both on the same page, right? It's like, that doesn't work. It's got to get down to the personal level. And that's another layer down on earning the right. But you know what it is. I'm not going to talk to anybody that calls me.
Because you hit on things that I am in market for. And I'm sure you're in market from certain things, maybe a car, a house, a vacation, a repair of some kind. Right. And if somebody happens to talk about that, you'll have a conversation.
Right.
But what's the likelihood of that happening?
Yeah.
And, everyone wants to do what you sell, but how they want to do it and how they're thinking about doing it now and how is it different, that takes a conversation.
It does. And I think, I know I personally have seen this, and my goal of you talking with you today is that it makes me reflect on things I've done, right? You don't want to get too dull in your job, but I'm sure you have a lot of people viewing today that they're at a different point of their career. And I think we joked about it. Like, you don't just say their name and their company. Nobody gives a hoot about your last name, who you work with, not even the product. And I think some people, sure, they think they were taught that, but they may forget about it. And it's back to that. What's the value you bring me? I could really care less what you do or who you work for, but you only have a very infinite amount of time to catch them. So that's on the front end, right? I think there's other ways through partnerships and stuff where you earn the right. We could talk about it if you want, but the front end seems to be most critical in this world because you got to get to the at bat, right? If you don't get to the at bat, you never have a chance.
Right. And I think people also think if I just have the right messaging, boom, there'll be interest. But they're not going to go from unaware of this problem to interest.
Right.
And I've used this analogy with like some people in the course. It's like when you go to a doctor, your knee's hurting. What do you hope he says? Oh, just take some aspirin, stay off of it for a week, put some ice on it. Now, if he says you got to have it operated, what do? You're like, I'm going to go home, I'll put some ice on it and take an aspirin.
Right.
The doctor has to get you under the x-ray because he's got to convince you that it really needs an operation. And there's steps to that. And a lot of doctors are old school. They go, man, you need an operation. It's just going to keep getting worse. And the person won't come back until it keeps getting worse.
And you know, it maps right back to your video where you were walking and your cardiologist friend, right? It's the same example. Like you're going to go in and they're going to leave until he says, nope, we're going in right now. You don't let them go. But
if you've ever known anybody who's had open heart surgery, do you think they make an appointment for it? This is what happened to my dad. Something else happens and they're at the hospital with the doctor, and the doctor, checks their heart and goes, we better have this x-rayed. Has it x-rayed? You're not going home.
Right.
They make the decision for you because the person will go home.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because let's see, go home or have my chest ripped open.
Right.
Which one would I rather do? What's on TV tonight?
It's so true. And so and that gets back to what you and I talked about before. I mean, your videos are so spot on, and back to earn the right. I think it's just, how would you call it? It's just a way to stop and think about your action before. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. And you and I are big believers in Price's Law for years. In fact, one of my best friends works for Shane at WalkMe is EJ Tag. And he'll remember 10 years ago, I've always been in favor of the Pareto theory, right? The 80-20. And now we think it's like 95-5 because of digital, but use your time wisely. It's not about, unfortunately, we have to joke about it, the KPIs. Those are useless. You're better off to send one targeted email you've researched, and it may not be right, but if you get it close, it may have a better impact than doing nothing. And I think it's more important now with everything going on.
Especially if you're in the enterprise space, because how many deals do you need to make your number? How many deals do you need to make your personal goal? Mm-hmm. It's not in the hundreds.
Yeah.
It's probably in the tens, maybe, right?
Yeah. And it could be less, but to your point, it's not only how many do you need. I always look at it as an executive salesperson on anything, even speaking with you only get one chance if you're lucky. A crappy email, a crappy voicemail, you may never get a chance to go back to them. And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, it could be one deal, 5 deals, let alone the time and the cycle, right? A lot of enterprise deals, we all know, all your viewers they're not a month sale typically. I mean, you're talking, and you got to work that within a calendar and a quarter and a month. So yeah, you're right. You only get a few at bats. You got to make them good. And that's back to the earn the right is, what am I doing? What did Shane do really well? I keep saying him just because his video is top of mind. Shane and I used to use self-funding. That's a tagline, right? If you're an executive, CFO, you're head of a contact center, head of marketing, and I say, Brian, you want to drive more leads than you've ever had for your team. Yet more importantly, in this market, I can help you self-fund that project so you don't really have to be asking for money. You're probably going to perk up a little bit and say, what are you talking about? I've earned the right at that point now to come in and hopefully share with you what I need. That's an example that I would try to use.
Yeah, because once you out yourself as either a spammer or a pitcher or any of that, you get put in the rep zone. Mm-hmm. Because we get them on LinkedIn all the time. I get 100 a day. Everyone telling me what I should be buying. And I don't know these people. I don't need what they're selling. I don't understand half of it.
Right.
So even if it was valuable, I wouldn't know. But like what you said about listeners, every podcaster wants listeners. And I get pitched guests all the time. And the smart ones who pitch me the guest will review the podcast, take a picture of it, put it in the email. This is an immediate give.
Yeah.
Value. And listen to your podcast. I have a client who I think might be a great guest. Let me know what you think.
Mm-hmm.
if it's not a match, tell me why, so I can hone my focus for you.
Right.
That person gets a reply every time.
It's awesome.
The 3 paragraphs, I don't know the guy's name. I got 15 links in there. I don't know if they're like an Amazon seller or they're an enterprise seller. You're making me do all this work to see if, and what, the 1 out of 10, it might be a match.
Yeah. And your number is spot on. And I think, again, it's not that you or I are better than anybody else. It's our craft. But for everybody to stop and reflect wherever you are in the process is what you just said. I work with companies, and I'm fortunate enough with Starbucks, companies like that, where just like you, they're getting, and they've said it before, Matt, I get 100 calls a day. I get 100 emails a day. I respond to 0 in most cases. And like you said, it all gets back to what we're talking about is, what am I bringing you? That specific thing in your case about showing your podcast and linking it back. It sounds obvious, but I really think people forget because they're being driven by a number.
Yes.
That doesn't, it's actually hurting you and the company and actually the world, because you want to deliver something that can help everybody.
And people still go back to the 90s. Why me? Why now? Emails. It's like, oh God. Okay, they're better than the spammy emails, but still, I don't know who you are. Are you a giver or a taker? I didn't get anything, so you're a taker, right? If someone knocks at your front door, what do? Do you just open it? Hey, how you doing? No, you look through the little window. Do I know them?
Right.
No. Do they want something, or are they going to give me something? Probably want something. But you order the new iPhone, FedEx shows up. You're running to the door. The door swings open. You're like, where do I sign?
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that seems almost old school, but all this automation has ruined it for anybody who's any good at sales.
Yeah. And I mean, I agree with you 100%. I mean, there's some automation and technology that can help you be more efficient.
Yeah.
But to your point, at the end of the day, it's what we've all probably learned. It's you and I speaking. People buy from people.
That's
right?
why they hired you. They didn't hire
Exactly.
you because you were better with the Cadence tool.
Right. And the fact that, sure, there's value in, I mean, there's companies out there, I think, that do the, I'll find you the email person and their background and whatever. That's great. It saves me a few minutes and I'm sure there's a value, but it's still the point we're talking about. How do you take that data? You're almost overloaded. Back when you and I started, I had a printout and names and maybe a couple software products. And then it's like, that's all I needed. And I had to figure out the angle, right? And now it's too much data.
It's way too much data. And there's because when I started, you couldn't figure out the email address, right? Because it was always scrambled and stuff. And there was no tools. And you had to call the main number because that's all you had. And you didn't have a name.
Yeah.
And what did we do? We talked to each other. You're selling the database. I'm selling the middleware. I'd find out when they bought the database, who bought it, who's got the juice.
Yeah.
Can I use your name?
It was detective work.
It was, and it still is, but the tools are different.
Yeah.
And the approach has to be updated.
Yeah.
But it's like I started a course, start the conversation, get the meeting. And we literally on one-on-ones, I go, tell me who you want to get into. Boom, I'll bring it up. I did it with Delta Airlines, found the guy on LinkedIn. Within 20 minutes, we had an email exchange. The CEO.
Goodness.
Right? And guess what? I wasn't talking about me and what I do. Yeah. I was talking about him and what he does. And he found value to that because guess how many nice emails he gets a day? Airline CEO. 0 nice ones. 1,000 mean ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
My bag didn't show up. I didn't get my aisle seat.
Yeah.
right?
And they'll go right around the normal channel just to go straight to the CEO's
Yeah, and the
office.
CEO's like, oh god, not another
Yeah.
one of
Yeah.
these, you know.
But that's the value. Like I said, to compliment you on this is, I mean, that's what you're offering people, right? Is your humor and your videos is real, right? So it's a great way to reflect that image and you remember it. I mean, look at how many I've rattled off in a few minutes because I just think they're great. It's the real nature of the world, but it's about, to your point, just you have to go back to some of the basics, the tools and the techniques. Maybe they haven't changed, but they're not going to replace what you do, the human interaction we have. And you've got to break through that door like you did. I mean, you're having people invest in you because you're thinking about what we're talking about, right?
Right.
It's earning the right.
And if you ask yourself the question, have I earned the right? Before you find out if you have earned the right.
Yeah.
And you say, well, have I done anything for them? No. Do I know something that can help them that's not just to benefit me? No. Do I?
Like, no, better move on from that one.
Right. So I should do something. And who do you want to talk to when the phone rings? Somebody you either know or somebody who's going to help you. Right. If it's somebody you don't know and isn't going to help you, voicemail. That's what voicemail's for.
Yeah. And I don't know if I'd love your thoughts on it. I think you might have even talked about this is, I've mentioned him. I've looked at Chris Voss's stuff that you put on. I've read his book again. I do think, there's all the subtleties, the words, the positioning, but where I'm going with this, I love your thoughts. I still think voicemail, it could be a missed opportunity. You're not interrupted. You can leave something. The guy's at home. He may hear that 20-second clip. A lot of people just hang up and don't do anything, or they blah, 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 right? They just spill their beans. I don't know if you think that's true, but I think it's a great opportunity.
Anything that gains somebody's attention, but you got to make it about them, not you. And there's a big difference between being a hostage negotiator and being a salesperson.
Yeah.
So I've had Chris on the show. I enjoy his work, but what we shouldn't try to do is just take templates, even if they're better templates. We got to start thinking, and we got to start thinking like clients, not like salespeople.
Yeah.
And I've interviewed probably 250 of the best salespeople that I can gather. And the number one thing is that outward mindset, curiosity, interest, respect, caring. And that comes through because that's what the energy that gets you to do all that research before. Yeah. Now you don't have to be a librarian, but you got to find something.
Yeah. And like you and I've used the word before, I think we've gone around, we're problem solvers. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, we sell. We all hate that word because you can get thrown into a bucket with some other, sales type mentality. But you're right. Curiosity, the joy of learning how a business is working or a particular piece of that business and solving that problem. That gets back to why we're earning the right is, what do I know about what I do and what my company's customers have done that I can help a Brian Burns? And like I said, there's not a lot of template. It's just short and sweet. You got to be to it, and it's got to be about you. And sometimes it's even lower than the company. It's down to a personal level. What does this mean to your job? Now, you're not going to call it out, but you've got to realize what are they thinking? Because at the end of the day, it's all about their personal gain, right?
So, and I got to tell you, because the pattern of these top people has been very consistent. And
what are the top three?
I don't want to give them away because then I can tell you
nobody calls you.
But none of them are surprises.
Okay.
You would not be, and if I told you that's so old school and stuff, but it's always worked. And the number of pitches I get for people to be on the show, probably 98% of them aren't a match. Not that they're bad people, they're just not a match for my show. And I do want great guests. I pay people to go find great guests. So I'd love to get some for free, but they make it so hard for me to even determine if somebody's a good match. It's like, have they been on shows like mine? Okay. It's the brutal truth about sales and selling. Are they in sales or selling? Okay, then you can misconstrue that as B2C versus B2B.
Mhm.
Okay. And that's easy. That's common. But and the ones that come on the show, the things that, yeah, you ever seen that post, the things you can do without having any talent, like show up on time, be
Oh, yeah,
prepared,
yeah.
right?
The top 10. Yep.
Say thank you, like these things that your parents told you in first grade, yet
It's like the kindergarten. Yeah. I think there's that book about the things you learned in kindergarten, right? That's all you need. So,
and a lot of them, and it's like, then how do I do that? Okay, well, that's it's not sometimes simple, but you know how to show up on time. Right?
yeah.
You know how to read a clock, you know how to manage your calendar,
Follow up, all the
yeah,
little things, like you said. Yeah. It's just, that makes a difference.
and you know what hasn't worked, so don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, Brian, what you've seen me help people is, and I don't want to say that everybody thinks of that, but it is a journey, right? Especially in enterprise sales, and most everybody you have, maybe even if you have people that are selling cars on a lot, it's a journey. It's typically not, I show up and I buy, like you said, at the front door, and they want to sell you,
Yeah.
pesticides or whatever for your yard. But you're just trying to live to fight another day. So you've got to hook a Brian Burns. We talked about the reasons and how you do that, because the next thing is you're going to move through that process as an enterprise rep. So you can't be thinking, I'm going to be done with this right away. And like I said, so you got to have that methodology or the process behind you to support it, because it does take time. But you got to realize that some people just think, I'm going to have a call. Woo, they're going to spend $3 million with me on cloud software. It's not going to happen.
Right.
But they forget.
And I got to tell you, I blame the managers more than I do the reps, because the managers are pushing them in the exact wrong direction. The activity over accomplishment, skills only on inbound. They don't teach them skills on outbound. No one's taught how to have a conversation with a stranger.
Yeah.
And we're not going in the right direction, because people don't talk on the phone anymore. People text.
Yeah.
So that teenage skill that we probably remember calling a girl for the first time.
Yeah.
The hardest cold call of your life. Right?
And you hate the silence, right? What do you do?
Yeah. Is Jennifer there? Who's this?
Oh, that is so.
You got to get by the gatekeeper, right?
Yeah.
And that's. Go ahead.
You're right, and that's hopefully what you're saying, because you've had some of the great things, just as we kind of package this together, is earning the right is about just thinking, what am I doing? Is it of value? Otherwise, to your point, there's other measures and people pushing you for metrics, but you want to think, how am I earning the right at whatever tenure of that relationship it is, right? We could have spent hours about, what do you do when they're a current client? Well, hopefully you've earned the right through certain things that you have a right to very bluntly ask them a question, right? And not feel bad about it. So I just think that you're right. I mean, the worst thing I've seen is you get on a call that somebody set up prospecting, which you think's great. They would never have the juice, as you said. Sure, I might say it's of value because I learned something, but it's not. And most importantly, you get that moment of silence where Brian's like, it's your call. What do you want to talk about? And you're done, right? Because you didn't have that.
You didn't have anything else.
Value. Right. And then you start throwing mud against the wall, which is the biggest thing that I think you, again, back to, you've ruined that opportunity probably to ever go back to that person. And again, an enterprise, maybe that was one of my 10 targets. I'm hosed.
Right.
So,
Because everyone can talk about themselves and what they do, but that's a commercial.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How are you different than a commercial? And what do you do when you hear a commercial? You zone out, right?
Turn it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You focus on something else. But what's everyone's favorite subject?
Themselves. Yeah. Oh. And you and I make fun of people, and we're just kind of getting off, but there's those people out there that are just saying, put out content for your brand. And I'm like, just to your point on a commercial, when I see things too many times, I turn it off. So, everybody has their own perspective and their own, whether they win or lose with that approach. But you're right. It's like most commercials people turn off. They don't want it. And that gets back to, did you shock me? Did you get my attention? Did you hook me? And it had to be this long. And I'm either good or bad.
Right.
Hopefully.
Yeah. And how much content is helping you? Because with my videos, I try and have a little gem. I keep it to a minute and a half. That's my rule. Maybe a minute. I try to put some comedy in it so that it's at least entertaining and it's easy to swallow. It's the sugar helps the medicine go down instead of, oh, I'm Brian, I know sales better than you. That everyone else kind of does and yells at you. And you're like, I don't want to be yelled at.
No. But you're spot on. I mean, it's what you and I talked about right when we loaded up here and, to sync up. Your stories are entertaining. It's everything you want to be. We're talking about, right? They're a minute 30. They're real. They're reflective. Half of us think you're peeking in our window because you're listening to our calls because you're spot on. And that's the value you're going to bring somebody, because they're going to be like, Brian's got a methodology that's going to help me be successful, or my company or my team. And I appreciate that, because I said, it makes me reflect, if nothing else. I've been doing this for 20 something years, but you can never, it's great. I mean, you're spot on. It's about them. And they're going to realize it. And hopefully that drives them to your business. For me, I just think it's great because it makes me think about stuff before I do something.
Cool. Hey, I appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect with you?
Probably LinkedIn, like most. I think we all look at it. It's Matt hashtag or quote Gibson at LinkedIn. And like I said, I looked today, you and I have pretty big pools of people, but I think about 200 to 300 people I know we're connected directly. So Shane and EJ and a lot of people. So it's good to see you, and thanks for having me talk.
Being able to start conversations and get meetings with your target market, your ideal customer profile, the people you want to meet, how much is that worth? How long have you been spending trying to solve this problem? It's something that has haunted sales reps from day one. If you've been able to get inbound, we know what to do with it. Inbound is easy. Taking an order is not really that hard. Making it bigger gets a little bit harder. Starting from scratch, being able to look at your total addressable market, prioritize it, and be able to come up with a systematic way that scales, that anyone can learn. There are entrepreneurs in the course, people who have never sold, engineers, MBAs, consultants who wanted to learn how to schedule meetings. Email wasn't working. Nobody comes to the course if they haven't tried 3 or 4 other things, if they haven't tried the templates and followed the idiots on LinkedIn who haven't sold in 20 years, and using what used to work with the why me, why this, why that email. Is it better than the template? It is. Can it work? It can. But even a broken clock is right twice a day. Now, do you want to just randomly try it, or do you want to understand the psychology behind it? And I have taught this to people and broken down my system to people, virtual assistants, who English is their second language. Okay? I break it down into tiny little pieces and have it implemented over a systematic way, and my calendar is full. People cancel on me, but it does get full. And at least I've got a decent full calendar every week when I start my week on Monday. I look at it and I go, great, okay. And I kind of hope a few cancel, but not the good ones, of course, or forget or whatever. But instead of spending my week trying to get meetings, I look 12 weeks out. Okay, some of that is, interviews and stuff, but a lot of it is people I want to talk to about business. So what if you could do that? And clearly you've tried stuff before. You're not here because everything is perfect. You're here because you want to do things better. And filling your calendar up with great opportunities is clearly the first start to being successful in sales. Because if you can do that, you don't need marketing. Sorry. It'd be great to have inbound, but have you looked at the quality of inbound? So what do you have left? You have existing customer base, which is good, and you should maximize it. That's the easiest business. But there's not enough of it. If there was enough of it, they wouldn't need you. They would cut up the territory or just give it to a customer success or support person. Why they hired us is to create magic, to earn the right to build these conversations. Now, you can try and do it with magic messaging or hounding or tenacity. All of those are ingredients. But why not do it with science? Do it with a systematic way that scales. Start the conversation, get the meetings, of course, for that. The other key course is winning the complex sale. Guess what? If you don't close those deals that are in the forecast, they're just going to go onto your quota next year, and essentially you're not going to get paid for them. Do you understand how a large complex sale works? I'm sure you think you do, but why didn't it close? Why did you lose it to no decision? Why did it get stuck? Why did it slip into next quarter? Do you understand why? You think you do, but what if you could talk with somebody, hear how other people are doing it? Somebody who's done it for longer than most of you have been alive. Even though I look young, baby, oh, the years are catching up on me. I'm telling you, I'm juicing, I'm running, I'm trying to stay in shape, but the years they're catching up on me. You got to get the knowledge while I'm still around. Winning the complex sale teaches you how companies buy. Nobody teaches this. It's not in any book. Why? Because very few people, if any, really understand it. And I got to tell you, I had a weird situation. I was talking to somebody who's been selling for 40 years this week. And the simplest thing that I teach in the course, they didn't know. Maybe not the simplest, but one of the key traps that people fall into. They were kind of, well, you can't really do that. And I go, well, you kind of have to. You don't really have a choice. If you don't do it, you're more in service than you are in sales. And I teach all of this stuff and I help people out. And it's not just lessons. There's conversations with office hours, which is an hour meetup every other Friday on Zoom. And then there's one-on-ones, the interactive coaching discussions that are recorded and put in the course. Imagine listening to an account plan, a deal planning session, ones that get stuck, ones that you're going into at all kinds of stages. And the secret elements that I have been using for years to close big deals. And I remember, going into those QBRs, the quarterly business reviews, and the first one, they all looked at me, oh, he's kind of a technical guy, he's kind of quiet, he's not the gregarious killer that I am, he's not doing this or that. And then the next quarter, they're like, he's a rock star. How'd he do that? Oh, it must be his territory. I bet he can't do it twice. Next quarter, oh, he did it twice. Biggest deals. It's not personality. It's knowing how to play the game, how to keep the ball moving, how companies buy, and how you control that process. Winning the complex sale is a game changer. So you can either spend 5, 10, 15 years, 25 years learning it, or you can start making that money right now. The only reason not to do it is, one, you're lazy. You're never going to get anywhere in sales anyway. You lucked out, the economy was great. Hopefully that's not you. Or you're cheap. Okay? And you might be cheap. And cheap is one way to go through life. And you kind of say, well, look how much money I saved. Right? And one thing that a CEO taught me early in my career is The company's goal was to get to 50 million, and they go, we're not going to save our way to 50 million, meaning not spending money is not going to get us to 50. We have to spend money to make money. And this company spent money. Maybe they were too far in the other direction, but you do have to spend money. I mean, if you saw my office get up here, I spend a lot of money on stuff. And you know what? I've never really regretted it. Some stuff I don't even use, and I'm like, well, at least I know it doesn't work. I'm not sitting around wondering and pondering. And other things, I'm like, well, thank God I spent that extra $1,000 and got the top of the line option because it saves me time. Time is something that the only way to buy it is finding smarter uses for our time. Or maybe finding a way to live longer. But the only way you get to spend that money is earning it. And earn it with your brain, not your back. Your back wears out. Your brain just keeps getting better. In some cases. Maybe not. But your back definitely wears out. Trust me. We'll see you next time. Make sure you're checking out the podcast. I dropped a brand new podcast called Sales Leadership, where I'm interviewing the very best sales leaders in the world. So if you want to know how they think, why they get into sales, what they look for in reps, how they are different, because there's a lot of mediocre sales leaders out there, but I don't interview them. I'm looking for the ones that are the best, that get promoted by their people. Their people recommend them, not themselves, not their boss, but their people. Because I got to tell you, there's maybe a couple that I would recommend. Most I would say, please never talk to this person. And there are good ones. And I kind of rank on managers a little too much. But a lot appreciate that. It's one of the key things that I've gotten back out of LinkedIn's posts is like, you keep me on track. You tell me what I wish my people would tell me. And I go, I only do it because this is what I'm hearing from the reps all the time. And the smart managers, they think about it. They don't have to do what I recommend, but they should hear it. They should listen to it. They should explain why things are the way they are. And a lot of times it's not their fault. Someone above them is forcing them to do it. But learn from the very best. We'll see you next time. Make sure you're listening to the Sales Questions, Brutally Honest Answers, as well as the B2B Revenue Leadership Show. There's so much content. I can't get enough. Also, check out the YouTube channel. And if you see my stuff fly by on LinkedIn, would it really hurt to give it a little thumbs up, a little comment, a little share? That would be appreciated by me. We'll see you next time.